First of all, I'm convinced, and I think the data will ultimately support this hypothesis, but I'm personally convinced that there's a fundamental difference between people who are entrepreneurs and people who are successful as professional managers and leaders of large established companies. To oversimplify it, entrepreneurs tend to be mavericks. They would not be people who would be able to make it through the sifting out of people in a large established company. The people who make it to the top of the large established companies are not only talented and bright, but they're able to get along with people, work and play well with others to such an extent that they have superb political skills. Entrepreneurs are by inherently not political. In fact, they're anti-political. Right? They're not even apolitical, but they're anti-political. And their organizations tend to have less politics until they reach a certain level of size and complexity. There are all the other factors about entrepreneurs in terms of risk-taking and others, but there are other more subtle things. For example, there's a hypothesis now that some people have. It's an informal hypothesis, but I believe it's probably going to be proven correct, that a lot of entrepreneurs have attention deficit disorder, which wouldn't surprise me. They have a small attention span. They have lots and lots of things invading their mind. Their mind is everywhere, and they need focus. And so, so that's the difference between the two, I think. The professional managers are people who would do well in a fraternity, sorority system, and they go up through the ranks, and they may be bright and capable, but they're not going to be as risk-oriented and as maverick personality as a classic entrepreneur. There's some exceptions. I think an example of that would have been Chuck Young at UCLA, for those people who know who he is. He was a classic entrepreneur who happened to be in an academic environment. In a startup stage, basically, the entrepreneur is everything, just like the mother is everything to the child. I mean, basically, the company is an infant, and the company is in its infancy, and the entrepreneur has to do everything for it. And it takes someone who has the willingness and ability to do everything. As the company grows, the entrepreneur needs to give up control. He needs to bring in stronger people, needs to delegate things in areas. Some are better than that than others. And by the time you reach a mature organization, which I'll pick as a rough benchmark, let's say $1 billion. It's not a perfect number, but it's a reasonable number in terms of that. At that point, you can have entrepreneurial firms that are well beyond $1 billion, but roughly at that point, you need to have made the transition from the pure entrepreneurship to an entrepreneurially oriented, professionally managed firm. And the leadership there needs to be more of a team approach of leaders. And I have, again, a hypothesis about that there are 4 key leadership factors or functions that have to be performed by people that are typically performed by 2, 3, or 4 people. The 4 functions are obviously strategic vision. There has to be the business foundation. There has to be someone who understands that. A good example is Howard Schultz at Starbucks. He understood what Starbucks could be and become. The second function that has to be performed is organizational systems and organizational development. As the organization grows, the framing of the organization needs to be adjusted appropriately, just like a house. And someone needs to think about that. And that typically is not, an entrepreneur typically doesn't have that ability. Some of them may have a sense of it, but they have to bring someone else in to perform that function. Third function is operations per se. Now, in the early stages, the entrepreneur can lead operations, but at a later stage, you need someone whose focus is operations, getting things done, not building. The entrepreneur is about building, but just getting things done. And there, like at Starbucks, was Howard Behar, who was the focus on retail operations, getting things done. He may not have been the person who could have conceived and created the organization, but he was certainly a person who could take the operations and develop the systems that are appropriate for that. And similarly, Orrin Smith, who was the CFO and later became CEO, was the person responsible for organizational development and systems. He was an accounting person. He thought in systems terms. He was disciplined and focused. Again, he would not have been the creative genius to conceive of Starbucks and have the charisma to lead it, but he did have the ability to envision what kinds of operational and management infrastructure the organization was needed. The fourth function is culture management. And there the entrepreneur has a lot to say about the original development of the culture, but later on others can come in and help spread the culture, almost like the apostles, if you will. I mean, what you have there is Howard Behar again at Starbucks. Howard Schultz started the culture, but Howard Behar was just as important as Howard Schultz in spreading the culture throughout Starbucks.